My name is Nick Jaskolski. I am a Life Scout in Troop 142, working on the Eagle Scout project. I'm here with Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Sanders with the 142nd Field Artillery Brigade. It is February 2nd, 2019. We are at the Armed Forces Reserve Center in Barling, Arkansas. I'm here with my fellow scout, Chorde Bartholomew, and this is an interview for the Veterans History Project for the Library of Congress. Thank you for doing this interview.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So to begin, just a little bit about your upbringing. Where were you born and where were you raised?
Yeah, so I was born in Carthage, Mississippi, which is a small town in the heart of Mississippi, right in central Mississippi. Born and raised there. Actually moved to Arkansas in 1997 when I finished college.
Oh, awesome. Who are your parents? What were their names?
My parents are Lindsay and Melvia Sanders, who are still together, by the way. I'm very proud of that. Both my biological parents. They raised three boys. I'm the youngest of three. Raised on a small farm. We didn't farm for a living per se. My dad essentially did that because he enjoyed it. So we had several different types of animals, all the way from cows to ducks. And again, didn't do it for money, but did it for just the fun of it, and to essentially keep his boys out of trouble.
So you have two brothers?
I do. I have two older brothers. The oldest is Howard Andre Sanders, who goes by Andre. He still lives in Mississippi, probably a quarter of a mile, if that, away from where my mom and dad live, which is still in the same area where I was actually raised. And then I have a middle brother that's closest to me in age. He lives in North Mississippi, in Olive Branch. His name is Lindsay Marquis Sanders.
Oh, so you went to high school and all that in Mississippi. So then you graduated college and came to Arkansas?
Yeah.
What were you doing before you entered the service?
Well, I was a freshman at Mississippi State University, and I had a first cousin at the time that was there with me. He too was a freshman. My middle brother that I just mentioned, Lindsay Marquis, he was a junior at Mississippi State, and we all, just prior to us joining the Mississippi National Guard, we were all college students at Mississippi State in Starkville, Mississippi.
So your brothers also joined the service?
Yes. So initially, my oldest brother joined the Mississippi Guard, the same unit that we joined, which was our hometown unit in Carthage, Mississippi. He joined, I want to say, 1985, 86 time frame. So he had spent quite a bit of time before my other brother and I, the one that was at Mississippi State with me, before we joined in 1993. So yeah, both of my oldest brother has served both in the Mississippi National Guard. He served on active duty over in Germany for about a total of maybe 15 years. Years. And my middle brother and I, of course, are still in. My middle brother, he's still in the Mississippi Army National Guard.
Oh, awesome. So you originally enlisted, you were an enlisted soldier?
Yeah, so joined the Guard as a private E2 in 1993 as a 62 Echo, which at the time was a heavy equipment operator in an engineering company in Carthage, Mississippi. So my job was to obviously operate heavy equipment such as bulldozers, road graders, scrapers, and bucket or front end loaders.
Oh, awesome. So you went to college in Mississippi State, and it was paid for by the Guard. Did you do ROTC or? No,
I didn't do ROTC. When I originally joined the Guard, I had no intention of becoming an officer. Obviously, the longer you live and the experiences that you end up experiencing, for that matter, life sometimes take you in different directions. So I did not join ROTC. I mainly joined the Guard, and I'm not ashamed to say it, but my outlook on the Guard and the way I perceive things now has obviously changed from the time I was 18 till I'm 44 now. So joined the Guard originally for money to pay for school, and outside of going to drill one weekend a month and annual training 2 weeks out of the year, the incentives that the Guard even offered back then from 1993 to 1997 when I finished were awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And the only regret that I have about being in the military 25 years later is that I didn't join when I was 17. I wish I'd joined when I was 17.
And why is that?
Well, because it's afforded me the livelihood I have today, and I have just another year, toward retirement under my belt. So, that's the only regret that I have is that I didn't make that decision until I was almost 19.
How did your parents feel about you joining?
Well, Dad was all on board, so he's a huge supporter of the military and the choices that his sons made, since all three of us has served or is still currently serving. Mom's a little reluctant. Of course, they're always worried and nervous about you getting called to war or called into conflict or action. But my family is strongly faith-based, have a strong belief in God, and that the good Lord above won't let anything happen to you that He doesn't intend to happen to you.
Right.
Yeah.
So, where did you go to basic training?
Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Fort Jackson.
So I joined the Guard along with my brother that I was telling you about that was a junior at State, Lindsey Marquis, and my first cousin, David Wingo. David Wingo and I actually came in as private E2s. My middle brother had enough rank, and not enough rank, but he had enough college hours that he came in as a private first class.
Oh, wow.
So we were a little bit, jealous of him because we're all going off to basic training together. Same location, same time, but he's wearing more rank than we are. So, so we joined in October of 1993, and because we were in college, we were considered a split option. So we actually went to basic training that following summer, 1994. And I will tell you that basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, was one of the...
All right, cool. So to pick up where we left off, you were basic training at Fort Jackson.
Fort Jackson, South Carolina, May of 1993. I remember being excited, to leave home and actually go off to basic training. Obviously, that was a requirement that you have to get in order to, get the incentives that you signed up for in the military. But man, basic training was a blast. If I wasn't as old as I am today, I'd love to go back and do some of that same training and stuff again. But we had a good time for the 9 weeks we were there at Fort Jackson.
And you went with your brother and your cousin?
Went with my brother, who's 2 years older than I, closest to me in age, and first cousin.
Did that make it a little bit easier?
Yes, it did. For simple fact that so my brother and I'm not 100% certain about my cousin. He was raised a little bit different than we were. We were raised hard. Coming up on the farm, we did a lot of manual hard labor to include splitting like firewood for your homes, not only our home but my grandparents' homes. We've done things such as catching cattle and loading cattle on trucks to take them to the sale or the slaughterhouse. So we were no stranger to being physically fit and waking up early in the morning, even in the summer when school was out, and actually getting out and working on Dad's farm. We also played a lot of sports in school, from basketball to football to baseball, year round. And whether school was in or not, we had a summer baseball league that we always participated in, and so we were physically fit and mentally ready as well to be successful at basic training.
So what were your instructors like at basic training?
Drill Sergeant Adams and Drill Sergeant Blanson. And 25 years ago to this day, well, not this very day, but I still remember those guys, and if they were to walk in this room right now, I would recognize them, I'm sure. But when I tell you most certainly two of the most professional NCOs, men, soldiers you ever want to see was my two drill sergeants. And they were the type of soldiers and NCOs that I wanted to be. I wanted to replicate and model that because I thought they were true professionals.
Right. That's good. So how did you adapt to military life? You said that
it was easy.
It was easy.
It was easy. I will tell you the only struggle that I had with basic training, if you want to call it a struggle, was Eastern Coast, and that was the first time I ever been on an airplane, was flying to basic training, right? So that was kind of, nerve-wracking. Country boy from Mississippi, never really been out of the state of Mississippi. Definitely not that far away from home for that period of time. So adjusting to being away from home for about 2 months was somewhat of a challenge, because you kind of got a little homesick, missed home.
Right.
But other than that, I would say being at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, with South Carolina being on Eastern Coast time, being an hour ahead of Central Standard Time, going to bed at 2100 or 9 p.m. at night was tough at first.
Yeah.
And then, you started realizing that from the time the drill sergeants wake you up in the morning to the time they put you back in the rack at night, you're so exhausted, you're going to sleep at 2100.
Yeah.
But initially, for about the first week, it was a struggle going to bed that early, because being a college student, heck, I was used to staying up to midnight and sometimes 1 in the morning. So.
Yeah. So, whenever you graduated basic training, where did you go to your MOS school?
So, as I stated, being a split option, when we returned from basic training, we had about a week in the summer of 1994 before we had to go back to college. So I, from 94 to 95, I attended my sophomore year of college at Mississippi State, and then went off to my advanced individual training to learn my job skill at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri in the summer of 94.
Awesome. And you were in the Mississippi National Guard. When did you come into the Arkansas Guard?
Joined the Arkansas Guard when I got my degree and finished at Mississippi State in 1997. So I did what's called a interstate transfer from Mississippi to Arkansas as an enlisted soldier at the time. I was a specialist E4, and talked to my unit that I was leaving in Mississippi, who put me in contact with recruiters here in Arkansas, Central Arkansas and North Little Rock area. And probably within about a month and a half, maybe 2 months after I left Mississippi, I found myself in the Arkansas Army National Guard with the 1st 206 Field Artillery.
Okay. You were deployed with them?
Yes. So I deployed with the 206. So in between all of that, when I moved to Arkansas, of course, I had to change jobs, military occupational specialty. So I switched from a 62 Echo heavy equipment operator in an engineering unit to what's called a 13 Fox, which is a forward observer in an artillery unit. And so my career begins in the artillery realm, or artillery spectrum. 1999, I decided to, so 1999 was my 6-year mark in the Guard. And I had a decision to make. That's your first term contract, 6 years active, 2 inactive, so I had a decision to make. Do I want to remain in the Guard, or do I want to try something different and or get out?
Yeah.
And so I am fortunate that I had a platoon sergeant and a battery commander at the time that approached me, and after looking at my records, and said, "Hey Sanders, you qualify for officer candidate school. Have you ever thought about being an officer?" "No, I haven't." "What's officer candidate school?" And so they take me over to the one of the bulletin boards in the unit armory there that I belong to, and he said, "I believe you meet all of these criteria and these requirements." I said, "Yeah, look, I've got a degree. I think I've got the 110 GT score and so forth, physically fit, in good standing with the unit." He said, "You ought to give OCS a try." And I did. And outside of joining the Guard initially in 1993, that's the second best decision I ever made in the military, was going to officer candidate school. So I did the 17, 18 months officer candidate school, traditional officer candidate school program with the Arkansas Military Academy down at Camp Robinson in North Little Rock. Commissioned in 2000 as a field artillery officer, and was assigned back to the 1st 206 Field Artillery, where I deployed with them for the first time in 2003 to 2005.
And were you a first lieutenant?
Yes, on that deployment, I was a senior first lieutenant. Served as a battery executive officer and platoon leader in a light field artillery battery that had Mike 10 Deuce 105 millimeter howitzers. So I served in Alpha Battery 1st to 206 in Taji, Iraq, for about, I'd say 6 months, maybe half of that deployment, before I was promoted to captain and pulled up to battalion staff to work as the battalion fire direction officer and assistant operations officer.
What are some memories you have from that deployment that you want to share?
Some good and bad.
Okay.
So the bad first. Obviously, knowing and seeing of other soldiers and officers killed in action, killed in combat. That's pretty tough, you know.
Right.
I up until that point, I had never actually seen someone killed. You know, I've experienced death, obviously, you know, through natural attrition in life, you know, elderly family members and friends passing away and so forth. But to see a young man or a young woman to be, you know, to lose their life in combat all of a sudden,
Right.
It's pretty hard. It's pretty tough.
Right.
And I harken back to an incident that happened on Camp Taji, Iraq, not long after we were there, April 24th, 2004. There was a rocket attack, indirect fire attack on the camp that we were doing operations from, and where we were eating and sleeping and so forth. And a pretty good friend of mine, Captain Arthur Bofelder, who was, I believe, the commander of HHC 39th Brigade Support Battalion, which was headquartered out of Hazen, Arkansas. He, along with 3 others, lost their lives that morning in a rocket attack, roughly about 05:30, 06 in the morning. And that was pretty tough to cope with and deal with that. The good about the deployment, made events such as that, seeing and witnessing, you know, death in a violent way such as that, actually made me stronger. I think it made me, I know it made me a better leader. I was 28, 29, I turned 30 over there, so that's 29 years old at the time. And, you know, I grew up fast on that 12-month deployment. And so it made me a better leader. It's made me a better man. It's made me a better father. It's made me a better husband. It's definitely made me a better son. And I would also think that it's made me a better friend. So learned a lot on that deployment, and wouldn't take those experiences back for anything.
Right. So while you were overseas, you can imagine you probably formed a lot of really close friendships and camaraderie. Can you tell me a little bit about like friendships you made?
Oh, absolutely. So, you know, in the good times.
Tried to stop it.
We're good. So, yeah, the friendships you made. So, you know, as you gained as a leader in combat, or a leader in any organization, I would imagine, you know, you can see the bond start to develop in tight, cohesive units at the squad, at the platoon, at the battery level. And so, you know, as I got stronger and more confident in myself as a leader, I could see that the soldiers that I was leading were also seeing that confidence in me. And so I will tell you, to this day, my battery commander at the time, my S3 at the time, my battalion commander, and then other peers, if you will, those were all superiors to me at the time. We're still all pretty close friends today. And so the ties and the bonds that are forged during a hard period of time like that, everyone away from home, witnessing, death in a violent way, hearing from back home where different loved ones or family members may have passed away and you can't go home for that particular service or whatnot to mourn their death, brings you all together. And
Right.
To this day, I would say just about everyone that I deployed with, that I'm still in contact with, we're all pretty good friends because we shared a period of time that not too many other folks can say that they've had.
Right. That's good. How did you, when you came home from that deployment, how did the community and your family react?
Oh, it was nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. So we redeployed in March of 2005, and we came back from Iraq through, I think Ireland is where we flew into, and initially that was the initial stopping point. And from Ireland, the airport in Ireland, all the way until we returned to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which was our demote station in Lawton, Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the tremendous community support to where civilians that don't even know you,
Right.
but because you wear the uniform, black, white, Asian, American Indian,
Mm-hmm.
male, female, didn't matter.
Right.
Doesn't matter.
Right.
So the level of support and the pats on the back and the
Right.
thanking you for your service and tears rolling out of the civilians' eyes as well as soldiers' eyes, it's tremendous experience.
Mm-hmm. So, whenever you came home, was it tough having to readjust to civilian life, or?
Not in terms of interacting with other folks, because
Right.
obviously you're interacting with your soldiers, and over time, as I discussed, you start growing bonds and learning more and more about them, because those are the only folks you really got to talk to and depend
Right.
on. You depend on them, they depend on you. You're
Yeah.
watching one another's six. But I will tell you, probably the biggest thing I had an issue with adjusting as a leader. So in the military, as a leader, you don't drive.
Right.
You don't drive yourself around on patrols or convoys or any type of missions. You don't drive on the FOB, the forward operating base.
Right.
You have a driver.
Mm-hmm.
And so after 12 months of not driving, that was a struggle to get back to Arkansas, and you're seeing all these people zipping by you, and you're in the middle of the road in the middle lane, and you've got both hands on the steering wheel, and it's like, oh my God, where am I?
Yeah.
So that was probably the biggest struggle for me, was getting back behind the wheel and just interacting with civilian traffic here in America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, whenever, at that time when you deployed, were you a full-time guardsman, or did you have a civilian job?
At that time, I had a civilian job, so I was
Mhm.
working at Odom's Tennessee Fried Sausage in
Mhm.
Little Rock. I was a night shift supervisor,
Mhm.
fully cooked sausage line,
Uh-huh.
and had great support from that employer when it came to my military duty.
Mhm.
They actually stayed in contact with me
Oh, wow.
via email.
Mhm.
And kept me encouraged and kind of kept me abreast as to what was going on within the organization. So no, I was not full time at the time. I had a civilian career
Mm.
going on.
So, you said, what was your unit you said again? It was the...
Unit was first of the 206th Field Artillery, which was and is still headquartered out of Russellville,
Mhm.
Arkansas.
When did you transition to the 142nd?
Transitioned to 142nd 2017.
2017.
And so I got on board full time with the Guard initially as a military technician, dual status Title 32 technician in 2006 after that first deployment.
Mm-hmm.
And my battalion commander, and this goes back to some friendships and bonds that you forge on deployments. My battalion commander at the time was Lieutenant Colonel Keith Clemmer,
Mm-hmm.
who went on to become the Deputy Adjutant General for the state of Arkansas, Arkansas
wow.
Guard. So he's a retired Brigadier General now. But he hired me into the full-time workforce in 2006.
Oh, wow.
And to this day, I've really really thank him for the livelihood that he gave me. And so on my second deployment to Iraq, I was in commander of a battery that I initially went with as the first lieutenant in 2003.
Oh, wow.
I commanded that same battery in combat in 2008. After we returned from that deployment in 2009, I was blessed enough to move out of the technician full-time arena into an active guard reserve position. So I'm an AGR officer at this time. So transitioned to the 142nd after several other MTO and drill weekend status assignments. And my full-time assignment is the one that has moved me to this side of the state in the, quote-unquote, the 142nd Field Artillery Brigade.
Yes. So you were second battalion commander?
Yes.
Yes. That's and that's whenever you in 2017. Is that when?
2017. That's correct.
2017.
That's correct.
And you have a son that's in the brigade.
I do. Yeah, and he actually should get promoted this weekend to PFC. So he's been in a year already. You know, and the older you get, I know you two are young men right now. But I promise you, the longer you live, the older you get, it seems like time just flies by.
Yeah. And
so it seems like yesterday that he actually joined the Guard and went off to basic training, AIT. And he's been in a year as of the 26th of last month, of January.
That's awesome.
So he should promote to PFC maybe this weekend.
That's awesome.
Very proud of him.
That's
very
awesome.
proud.
So is military, this kind of goes back to your family, but is military kind of a tradition, your family?
No, it's not a deep tradition in my family. My uncle, my youngest uncle, who's on my dad's side, he did some time on active duty as a military police officer, so an MP, and then got off active duty and joined the Mississippi National Guard, where he went on to do a total of 20-something odd years and retired. So he's retired. Now, following in his footsteps was my oldest brother, and then of course my other brother, and then myself. So that's about as far back as I can trace my family's military roots. And that's not to say that we maybe may not had someone to serve in World War II and World War I and maybe in the Korean War, but I know we didn't have anyone close in my family that was in the Vietnam. So.
And your oldest brother was the first one of y'all to join?
In my immediate family, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How did your military career, how has it affected your life?
Oh my God, it is my life.
Yeah.
It's my life. I don't know, I tell myself this every day, I don't know what else I would be doing if I didn't have the military in my life.
Right.
And I am so thankful and so blessed to, everyone, Lieutenant Colonel, Brigadier General retired now, Keith Clemmer, Colonel retired John Mickey Stewart. General Clemmer initially hired me into the technician workforce, gave me a start, gave me a shot, and Colonel retired Mickey Stewart hired me into the AGR workforce. And so, the military is my life. I love it. It's given me and my family the livelihood that we have and so enjoy today.
That's great. What are some life lessons that you've learned over the years?
I'd say the biggest life lessons I've learned came out of my first deployment. The good and the bad. Right. And with the bad came really most of the good. Like I talked about, I'm a better man, a better friend, better father, better husband, better son. I feel, I'm just a better person all around.
One question kind of goes back a little bit. When 9/11 happened, you were in the Guard. What was your reaction to that? So
I was at Officer Basic Course, Field Artillery Officer Basic Course is what it was called then, in 2001. It's called Basic Officer Leadership Course now, Basic Officer Leader Course. but same concept. So I was at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and I'll never forget the morning it happened. We were in our first day of automated gunnery, and our instructor came in and said, "Hey, we don't know what's going on. Don't want to really freak anyone out, but an airplane has just hit the World Trade Center." And so we were like, well, you know, my classmates and I, how does an airplane, I know the World Trade Center is pretty tall, but how does an airplane fly, you know, what's it doing that low to hit the World Trade Center? And so after a brief pause within the class, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, we all, you know, went back and resumed class. So the instructor started back teaching and whatnot. And then, I don't know, maybe 3 to 5 minutes later, another instructor walked in and whispered in my instructor's ear, and you know, essentially he said that, you know, the second plane has now hit the other one, or the other tower. And so we immediately were allowed to leave class. If we had any family members that worked in the New York area, Manhattan area or whatnot, to call and start trying to check on them. And then obviously everyone, you know, left the classroom of instruction, went to our basic officers' quarters, BOQs, and just started watching CNN or Fox News or you know, whatever news channel you can get in front of, because everyone was showing what was going on.
Right.
And so the world as we knew it, and I know you both are tracking this, the world as we knew it changed in the blink of an eye.
Right.
So where you could drive on to just about any military installation, whether it be National Guard, Reserve, Army Reserve, Navy, Marine, what have you, especially Fort Sill, there weren't any guards at the gates prior to 9/11. You could drive on and drive off, and there, you know, there's no ID checks, no random checks of vehicles, this, that, and the other. So the world as we knew it changed very quickly during 9/11. I'll never forget where I was at and what I was doing.
So, how has your experiences with the military affected your outlook on like war and conflicts overseas, all that?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I will tell you that obviously, you know, no one, a rational person should not want war.
Right.
Should not be in favor of conflict. You should do everything within your power to the left of going to conflict or going to a war to avoid it.
Right.
Whatever diplomatic measures you can put into place to avoid war, then that's what we should do. But
Right.
Oftentimes war is necessary.
Right.
It's necessary to achieve a political means or political objective.
Right.
It's sad to say, but that's the fact.
Right. And on your deployments, how did the local populace perceive American troops?
I think, unlike Vietnam,
Right.
I mean, you got one end of the spectrum to the other. So you got Vietnam over here, and you know, the global war on terror here that I was involved in on two separate deployments. But I'd say the local populace was very supportive of the troops' efforts during the global war on terror in both Iraq and Afghanistan. The populace that I talked to, that I was engaged in, was very supportive.
So, what message would you like to leave to future generations who will watch this interview?
If you're a young man or young woman, and regardless of your age, obviously you need to be within the recruiting age, but I will tell you that joining the military, whether you do it for the educational incentives or any other incentives that the military may have to offer, whether you do it for the lineage and honors, if you will, of your family and the heritage of your family, maybe following in a great-grandfather or grandmother, mom, dad, brothers, sisters' footsteps, whatever the reason, you know, serving in the military has been the best decision that I've ever made. It's made me the man that I am today. made me the leader that I am today. And like I said, I don't know what else I'd be doing if I didn't have the military in my life. And so the message that I would definitely leave is, do something bigger than yourself. The world, and for sure America, is not just about me or you. It's about giving back. And what better way to give back to this great country, your state, your community, your brothers and sisters to the left and right of you, and your loved ones, than to wear the uniform and serve.
Is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed that should be added?
No, I really appreciate the two of you thinking of me for this particular project, and wish you guys the best of luck.